You know, I never thought that a kiss could cost me my career and give me a new life at the same time. But fuck, that's exactly what happened. It all started with that shit at the airline. 29 years, 7 years of flight attendant experience, impeccable reputation, and everything went to hell because of one asshole passenger who decided he could grope me for an instrument during the flight. I fought back, like any normal person should, but for some reason the management decided that I was aggressive towards a client. Dismissal under the article. Without compensation, without recommendations, with a note in my work record that closed the door for me to any major airline. I sat at home for a month, ate instant noodles, and sent out resumes left and right. My mother called every day, asking if I needed help with money. I lied that everything was fine, although there was less than $2,000 left in the account. Pride is a shitty thing, especially when it prevents you from accepting help from the person you love most. And then Sophia contacted me, assistant to some billionaire who needed a personal flight attendant for private flights. The salary was 3 times more than what it was in commercial aviation. I thought it was a scam or some shady crap, but what did I have to lose? The meeting took place in an office on the 50th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Sophia was an elegant woman in her 40s who spoke as if every word was worth money. She explained that her boss was Marcus Rodriguez, a tech billionaire with several startups and a private jet. He needed a professional flight attendant for his regular business trips. No quirks, no pitfalls, just work. The first flight was to London. I arrived at the airport 2 hours before departure, checked all the equipment in the cabin, prepared the bar and the menu. The plane was fucking awesome. Gulfstream G650, 8-seater cabin, leather and wood trim. I worked on the most expensive commercial flights, but I have never seen such luxury. Marcus showed up 15 minutes before takeoff. Tall, early 40s, in a perfectly tailored suit. Dark hair with gray at the temples. Brown eyes that immediately assessed me from head to toe. Not lustfully, like that asshole from the airline, but simply attentively, like a man accustomed to quickly analyzing people. I introduced myself, explained how the flight would go, showed him the location of everything I needed. He listened politely, but I felt like he was studying me. He asked questions about my experience, about why I left commercial aviation. I lied about wanting to try something new. He nodded, but I could tell from his eyes that he knew there was more to the story. Takeoff went smoothly. Marcus settled into his seat with his laptop, and I went about my duties. An hour into takeoff, there was a little turbulence. Nothing serious, but enough to make anything loose move. I was serving Marcus champagne, Dom Perignon naturally, when the plane shook more than usual. The glass slipped out of my hands and fell right on his white shirt. An expensive one, apparently. The champagne spread in a wet spot across my chest, and I almost shit myself from horror. First flight, and I've already fucked it all up. But Marcus just laughed, said it was okay, it happens, asked if there was anything on board for cleaning. I had a special stain remover. I always took it with me after several incidents with red wine on commercial flights. We walked to the back of the cabin, where there was a small sleeping cabin. Marcus took off his jacket and shirt, and I saw his torso fit, lightly tanned, a few scars on his left shoulder. I tried to focus on the stain, applied the product, and began to gently blot the fabric. He stood there, wearing only his trousers, and I could feel the warmth of his body. The scent of his cologne mingled with the champagne. My hands shook slightly. Not from nerves, but from something else. When I raised my head to say that the stain was almost gone, he looked at me with such intensity that it took my breath away. And then he kissed me. It was unexpected and yet inevitable. His lips were soft, the taste of champagne mixed with something else, mint perhaps. The kiss was slow, careful, as if he was testing my reaction. I didn't pull away. On the contrary, I moved closer. And then the kiss became deeper, more passionate. His hands were on my waist, mine on his chest. The skin was hot under my palms. I felt his heart beating as fast as mine. Time stood still. There were only the two of us in this small cabin at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Then he pulled away. He looked into my eyes and I saw surprise in his eyes, as if he himself hadn't expected to kiss me. We stood there for a few seconds, breathing heavily, and then he picked up his shirt and said the stain was gone. The rest of the flight was strange. We both pretended nothing had happened, but I felt his eyes on me every time I turned my back. And when I was serving him dinner, our fingers accidentally touched and a surge of electricity went through me. In London, he thanked me for the professional work, said he was satisfied, and that Sophia would contact me about the return flight in 3 days. He behaved absolutely correctly, as if there had been no kiss between us. I began to think that I had dreamed it all. I spent 3 days in London in a cheap hotel near the airport, trying to understand what had happened. I analyzed every second of that moment in the cabin, every look he gave me, every word he said. I was no virgin with men, but I had never slept with clients. It was taboo, especially in a situation where he literally controlled my career. The return flight was going to be a test. I was prepared to be as professional as possible, to keep my distance, to give no reason for the situation to repeat itself. But when Marcus came on board, the tension between us could have been cut with a knife. He also tried to keep his distance. He was polite but cold. He hardly raised his eyes from his laptop. I served him drinks and food like a robot, trying not to get too close. But it didn't last long. Somewhere over the Atlantic, he closed his laptop and looked at me. He asked if we could talk. I sat down across from him, and he told me he couldn't get what happened 3 days ago out of his head, that he hadn't planned on kissing me, but that he didn't regret it. And he asked if it had been more than just an accident for me. I could have lied. I could have said it was a mistake, that I didn't want to complicate our working relationship. But when I looked into his eyes, all the words disappeared. I told the truth, that I couldn't forget that kiss, and that we seemed to have problems. He laughed. For the first time on the entire flight, he laughed sincerely and said that problems were an understatement. Then he asked what we were going to do about it. I answered that I didn't know, but that I wasn't planning on quitting yet. He nodded and said that was good, because he wasn't going to fire me either. Thus began the strangest time of my life. For the next few months, we flew all over the world: Tokyo, Dubai, Berlin, Sydney. Each flight was a test of strength. We tried to keep our relationship professional, but there were always sparks between us. Marcus was not the arrogant billionaire I expected. Yes, he was demanding and used to everything being perfect, but he also treated me with respect. He asked my opinion on restaurants in the cities where we stayed, inquired about my plans for my free time. Gradually, our conversations became more and more personal. I learned that he grew up poor in Texas, that his father was a construction worker and his mother a school teacher, that he made his first million at 25, creating a food delivery app that he later sold to a major corporation, that he had a wife, but the marriage had broken up 3 years ago because of his obsession with work. They had no children. He, in turn, asked me about my family, about why I became a flight attendant. I told him about my mother, who worked 2 jobs after my parents divorced to give me an education, about how I dreamed of traveling and saw in this profession an opportunity to combine business with pleasure, about plans that collapsed along with my dismissal. He listened carefully, asked questions, and I felt like he was genuinely interested in me as a person, not just an employee. This was new to me. In past relationships, men either only wanted sex or saw me as a pretty accessory. Marcus was different. The turning point came 2 months into our collaboration. I received a call from my mother. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer and needed surgery and chemotherapy. Insurance only covered part of the costs, and the rest, almost $50,000, had to be paid out of pocket. I was desperate. My salary was good, but I didn't have that kind of money. Banks refused to give me a loan because I had recently been laid off and hadn't worked long enough at my new job. I thought about selling my apartment, but even that wouldn't have been enough. That day we were flying to Chicago. Marcus noticed that I was not in the mood, asked if everything was okay. I said that I had family problems. I did not want to go into details, but he kept asking, and in the end I told him everything. He listened in silence, then said he was sorry and asked how he could help. I told him I was just grateful he had listened. Sometimes it's enough just to share your problem with someone. The next day, the hospital called me and said the bill had been paid in full by an anonymous donor. I knew right away who it was. When Marcus returned from his meetings, I was waiting for him in the hangar. I was angry as hell. Not because he helped, I was grateful to tears, but because he did it quietly, without consulting me. I felt humiliated, as if I were a beggar being given alms. I told him everything I thought. I screamed for about 5 minutes, waved my arms, called him an arrogant jerk who thinks money solves everything. He stood there and said nothing until I ran out of steam. Then he came up to me and said that I was an idiot, that he did it not out of pity or arrogance, but because he couldn't watch me suffer. That money for him was just numbers in an account, but for me, it was an opportunity to save the person I loved most. And that if I was so worried, I could consider it a loan and pay it back whenever I wanted. And then he kissed me for the second time. This kiss was different, not gentle and careful like the first, but passionate, demanding. I resisted for a second, still angry, but then I gave in. I put my arms around his neck, pressed myself against his body, and we kissed in the middle of the empty hangar like teenagers. When we pulled away, he looked me in the eyes and said that he couldn't pretend anymore, that he thought about me constantly, that these months had become torture for him. I said that for me too. We agreed to try. Carefully, without telling anyone, let's see what happens. It was risky. He was my employer. The difference in age and social status was huge, but I didn't care. For the first time in many years, I felt truly alive. The next few months were a roller coaster. We met in secret. Dinners at his apartment when he was in New York, weekends at his house in the Hamptons. We tried to keep our distance on flights, but it didn't work out that way. Stolen kisses on empty planes, casual touches, glances that spoke louder than words. Marcus was an attentive lover and an interesting conversationalist. We could talk for hours about books, films, politics. He talked about his projects, about the places I saw during flights. We had a lot in common, despite our different origins. But there were complications. His world was very different. Business dinners, charity events, meetings with people whose names I knew only from the news. I felt out of place when he took me along to some private parties. Everyone was polite, but I could see them looking at me appraisingly, trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing with Marcus. And then there was the flight to Miami, a regular business trip. Marcus was supposed to meet with investors about a new startup, but there was a mix-up with the reservation at the hotel. Instead of 2 single rooms, we were given one one-bedroom suite. The manager apologized, explained that the hotel was full because of some conference, offered a cot. Marcus said that everything was fine, we would figure it out. When we went up to the room, I suggested sleeping on the sofa, but he shook his head. He said that we were adults and could sleep in the same bed without doing anything. I agreed, although I knew it would be a test. The first night we really just slept. We lay on opposite sides of the huge bed, as far away from each other as possible. But on the second night, after dinner with the investors, we returned to the room tipsy and relaxed. Marcus suggested we take a dip in the rooftop pool. It was 1 in the morning. The pool was empty, just the 2 of us under the stars. The water was warm, the air was cool, the city lights were sparkling below. We swam, chatted about all sorts of nonsense, and the atmosphere was so intimate that I knew something was going to happen today. When we got out of the pool, Marcus came up to me and said he couldn't resist anymore, that he was in love with me, and it scared him because he'd never felt anything like that, not even with his ex-wife. I replied that I was in love too, but I was afraid that we were too different, that sooner or later he would realize that he could find someone better suited to his world. He took my hands and said that he liked my world better, that with me he felt like himself, and not like Marcus Rodriguez, the billionaire and public figure. Just a man who fell in love with a handsome guy with a kind heart. We kissed right there, wet under the stars. And then we went up to our room and spent the night together. It was wonderful, tender and passionate at the same time. Marcus was a caring lover, attentive to my needs. We made love until dawn and then lay in each other's arms. And I thought that maybe fairy tales do happen after all. In the morning, Marcus said he wanted to take me to Italy. He had a house in Tuscany and was planning a vacation there. He suggested combining business with pleasure. He wanted to open a new company related to luxury tourism, and my experience and service could be useful. I agreed. We spent 3 weeks in Italy, the best of my life. The house in Tuscany turned out to be an 18th century villa with vineyards and olive groves. We worked on a business plan, drove around the area, studying local hotels and restaurants. In the evenings, we cooked dinner together, drank local wine, made love under the stars on the terrace. Marcus was a different person away from business and obligations. Relaxed, easygoing, romantic. He took me to small villages, told me the history of each place, bought me gifts, not expensive jewelry or branded items, but some nonsense that somehow mattered. A book of poems in Italian, a handmade ceramic cup, a dried flower from the villa's garden. I started to think that we could really work it out. That differences in background and financial status didn't matter when there was real feeling. Marcus seemed to think so too. He talked about future plans in which I played a central role. But reality returned when we arrived in New York. We were photographed by paparazzi at the airport. Marcus had his arm around my shoulders. We were both smiling, looking like a couple in love. The photos appeared in the tabloids the next day with headlines like "Billionaire and His Secret Lover" and "Marcus Rodriguez has found a new love." Marcus tried to hush up the situation. His PR team issued a statement saying that I was his employee, that the photos had been misinterpreted. But it was too late. The internet was already buzzing with discussions, and stock news speculated about the impact of Marcus's personal life on his business. The trouble started a week later. Several major investors demanded to meet with Marcus. They were unhappy with the scandal and the fact that he had hidden his orientation from them. They said it could affect the reputation of the companies they had invested in. Marcus tried to convince them that his personal life had nothing to do with the business, but they were adamant. Either he ends the relationship with me and publicly declares that the rumors are false, or they withdraw money from his projects. I found out about all this by accident. I went to his office to discuss the details of the next flight and overheard part of a phone conversation with one of the investors. He was screaming that Marcus was putting millions of dollars at risk because of his sexual perversions. When Marcus finished the conversation, I said that I understood the situation and was ready to leave, that I did not want to be the reason for the collapse of his business. He got angry, said that he would not let me go anywhere, that he would find a way to solve the problem. But I could see how it was tearing him apart. Marcus was a workaholic. His companies were his life's work. And here, he had to choose between love and everything he had built over the years. The choice was obvious. I wrote a letter of resignation, not of my own free will. That could explain my departure by some professional differences. I left it on the table in his office when Marcus was in a meeting and left. I thought it was over, that he would understand that it would be better for everyone. I planned to disappear from his life, give him a chance to restore his reputation and continue doing what he loves. But Marcus found me at home 2 hours later. He burst into the apartment like a hurricane, waving my application and screaming that I was an asshole and a coward, that he was not going to choose between me and the business, because without me, the business was meaningless. I tried to explain that I was doing this for his own good, that he would lose millions because of me, that the investors were right. A scandal could ruin his reputation, but he didn't want to listen. He said he had called a press conference for tomorrow, that he was going to publicly announce our relationship and tell homophobic investors to go to hell, that there were plenty of other people willing to invest in his projects, and he would find them. I was shocked. I asked him if he was sure he was ready to risk everything for me. Marcus came up to me, took my hands, and said that for the first time in his life he was absolutely sure of something, that he loved me and was not going to hide it. The press conference took place the next day. Marcus spoke to journalists and officially confirmed our relationship. He said that I was not just his boyfriend, but a business partner in a new project, an elite tourism company that we were planning to launch together. That my experience in service and knowledge of the industry made me an ideal co-founder. The reactions were mixed. Several old investors did indeed leave taking their money, but new ones appeared, young, progressive, who didn't care about Marcus's orientation. Moreover, some considered his coming out a bold move that added points to his reputation in the eyes of the progressive public. We launched the company 6 months later. Lux Journeys is an elite travel agency specializing in individual travel for VIP clients. Marcus was in charge of finance and strategy, and I was in charge of operations and customer service. The first year was difficult. We had to work hard, prove that we were not only lovers but also serious business partners. But gradually things started to improve. Our clients, Hollywood stars, politicians, businessmen, appreciated the individual approach and impeccable service. It's been a year since we officially became a couple. Marcus suggested celebrating this anniversary at our house in Tuscany. Yes, it's our house now. He transferred the documents to our common names. We were sitting on the same terrace where we first said, "I love you," drinking the same wine, looking at the same stars. Marcus took out a small box and said he had a proposal. There was a ring inside. Simple, elegant, without unnecessary decorations. Exactly what I would have chosen myself. Marcus said that we cannot officially get married. Same-sex marriages are not recognized in Italy. But he wants the whole world to know that we belong to each other. That this is not just a relationship, but a lifelong commitment. I looked at the ring and thought about the incredible journey we had been on. From a casual kiss on a plane to this moment, a proposal on the terrace of a Tuscan villa. It was like something out of a movie, only more real than any movie. Of course, I said yes. We had a ceremony a month later, a small one, only the closest ones. My mother, who, by the way, has completely recovered and adores Marcus, his parents, who were shocked at first, but then accepted me into the family. A few friends. Sophia was a witness. She was one of the first to support us when it all started. The ceremony was performed by the local mayor, an old Italian who said that in his long life he had seen many couples in love, but rarely such a sincere love as ours. We exchanged rings and vows under the olive trees, and then there was a dinner of homemade pasta and local wine. It was the best day of my life. And you know, what's the funniest thing? I was thinking about that asshole passenger who groped me on that ill-fated flight. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have lost my job, I wouldn't have ended up with Marcus, and this whole thing wouldn't have happened. Sometimes the shittiest events in life lead to the most wonderful consequences. We now live between New York and Tuscany. Business is booming. We now have 3 offices in America, Europe, and Asia. I still fly occasionally with VIP clients, but now as the owner of the company, not just a flight attendant. Marcus is still a workaholic, but he has learned to find a balance between work and personal life. We travel together, not only for business, but also for pleasure. We discover new places, try local cuisine, meet interesting people. Of course, not everything is always smooth. We have arguments, like all couples. Marcus sometimes becomes too controlling, and I, too stubborn. But we have learned to talk, to explain our positions, to compromise. Recently, we discussed the possibility of adopting a child. Marcus never thought he wanted children, but in recent months, he has been bringing up the topic more and more often. He says he wants to start a family, to give someone the love and care that we give each other. I'm not ready yet. It takes time to think about such a serious step, but the very fact that we can talk about it, plan a common future, makes me happy. You know, people often ask me what it's like to be with someone so much richer and more powerful than you. Do I feel inferior? Do I feel like he's taking advantage of me? To be honest, I did have those thoughts at first, especially when we first started dating. But Marcus has never given me any reason to doubt the sincerity of his feelings. He doesn't try to change me, doesn't demand that I conform to some standards of his world. On the contrary, he says that I help him remain human in the midst of numbers and deals. And money? Yes, it is there, and it simplifies many things. But happiness is not in it. Happiness is that I have a person who loves me as I am, who will support me in any situation, who is ready to sacrifice his reputation and business for the sake of our relationship. Sometimes, when we sit on the terrace of our house in Tuscany, I think about how it all happened, about how one random moment, a spilled champagne, changed my whole life, led me to a person I could not even dream of. Marcus often jokes that we should build a monument to that glass of Dom Perignon, or at least drink champagne of this particular brand every year on the anniversary. And that's what we do. Last month, Sophia admitted that she had suspected something would happen between us from the very beginning. She said that she had never seen Marcus study a candidate's resume as carefully as he did mine, and that after our first flight, he spent half an hour asking her about me, whether I worked professionally, whether I had found anything strange in his behavior. It turns out I impressed him even before that fateful kiss. And I thought it was all about my blue eyes and my tight-fitting ass. Although this also played a role, as he later admitted. We are planning to expand the business. Marcus wants to launch a line of eco-hotels in different countries, and I suggested creating a training program for elite service personnel. We have many ideas and ambitions, but that's not the main thing. The main thing is that we have each other. That every morning I wake up next to the person I love with all my heart. That we can talk about everything, from business plans to what movie to watch in the evening. That I have someone who will understand, support, make me laugh when I feel bad. Who will be proud of my successes and help me cope with failures. It's called family. And it doesn't matter that we don't have a stamp in our passports. We are connected by something stronger than any official documents. With love. Yesterday, Marcus told me that he dreams of growing old with me. He imagines us sitting on the same terrace in 30 years, gray and wrinkled, but still holding hands, still telling each other stories, still laughing at the same jokes. I can imagine it too. And you know what? I like this picture. Of course, no one knows what the future holds. Maybe we'll have a big fight. Maybe the business will fail, or one of us will get sick, or something else will happen. But right now, in this moment, I am happy. Completely, unconditionally happy. And if it all ends tomorrow, and I really hope not, I will be grateful for every day we have spent together. For every kiss, every laugh, every fight, and every reconciliation. For every flight, every candlelit dinner, every morning in each other's arms. For how one spilled glass of champagne led me to the love of my life. And you know what I've learned over the years? Love is not a fairy tale. It's work. Every day. Work on yourself, on relationships, on not losing what you have. But when you have the right person by your side, this work doesn't seem hard. It becomes a joy. Marcus is my right man, and I seem to be his. And this is the fucking best thing that ever happened to me.